For the longest time, Illumination Studios has been treated as the butt monkey of the industry when it comes to animated movies, and I wouldn't say that reputation is undeserved. It's not that their movies are horrendously awful, but they definitely have an embarrassing catalog of bad movies. And to top that off, they don't have a noteworthy list of good movies to back up their potential as good storytellers. Aside from the first and maybe second Despicable Me movies, no one really talks about how good their other movies are. And I'll admit I feel the same way. The most fun I've had with an Illumination movie besides the first two DM movies is the two Sing movies, but only because they have good song numbers. And I guess The Secret Life of Pets because I'm a sucker for cute animals doing cute animal things, and because I thought Snowball and Gidget were fun characters. But even that eventually went to shit, so whatever. The point is, you'd be very hard pressed to find anyone who would go so far as to say that they're a passionate fan of Illumination Studios. Even their best movies aren't particularly noteworthy, and there's nothing special or unique about the studio that stands out, especially compared to its competition. Disney is considered the grandfather of Western animation, or at least they used to be, for their masterful recreation of fairy tales and adaptations of existing works by retelling them as timeless animated stories. DreamWorks subverted everyone's expectations with the Shrek franchise for its unique take on Disney tropes and fairy tale cliches, and has since moved on to create some of the most passionate animated film trilogies of all time, along with a number of one-shot movies that have aged surprisingly well. Blue Sky Studios, in spite of their obvious flaws, still managed to have its fair share of great animated films. Most notably Ice Age, where they successfully told a gripping and tightly written story of friendship and brotherhood that manages to be satisfying and expressive in spite of the limitations of CGI animation at the time. Illumination gave us the Minions. Their movies are extremely cliché and uncreative, with their stories revolving around bland and boring characters topped with unwitty and half-baked humor. For the longest time, the visual quality has been the only element of their films worthy of praise because everything else is either lackluster, obnoxious, or empty. And it seemed like the possibility of a truly great Illumination Studios film was nothing more than a fleeting dream. Something we can hope for, but will more than likely never come. But then something happened. Something unexpected. Something no one saw coming. It was revealed in late 2021 that Illumination Studios was collaborating with Nintendo themselves to create a movie that would bring a new renaissance for not just Illumination Studios, but video game adaptations at large. For it was revealed that Illumination Studios was working on none other than the Super Mario Bros. Movie. The lead up to this movie has been quite the journey. First, people were dreading it and making fun of it for the simple fact the movie was being made by Illumination Studios. But when the movie released its first trailer, people's thoughts were changing with the wind. They were amazed by the faithfulness of the source material, how vibrant and expressive the visuals were. They were stunned by how seemingly they recreated settings from the games. The movie went from something being made fun of to something people had growing hopes for. And that wasn't the end of it. With the release of more trailers, people's expectations for this movie began to soar, as it didn't seem like your average run-of-the-mill Illumination Studios film. The humor was actually charming with no shitty and predictable punchlines. The story had an interesting and original spin on the Super Mario formula. The characters had fun and charming personalities and entertaining chemistry between each other. And there were all sorts of Easter eggs and elements from the source material that were being used without it being cringy fan service. It actually felt like the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, where the people behind the film were using the source material to tell a fun story instead of just exploiting a popular IP for money. And for this to come from Illumination Studios, that was definitely saying a lot. Hopes were high and expectations were set for Mario fans around the world until the movie was finally released on April 5th. So, how does it meet all those wild expectations? Well, you've seen the title of the video, so you already know the answer. This movie is a whole lot of fun from beginning to end. From the opening scene to the end credits, it's a delightful time as both a moviegoer and as a lifelong Mario fan. Now, this is going to be a largely spoil-free review of the film, as I don't want to ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but I'll still go over the movie's qualities and elements to look over what works and what doesn't. And fortunately, there's a lot in this movie that works. The first strength being its unique take on the Super Mario formula. We're all used to it being about Mario and Luigi teaming up to rescue Princess Peach. But this time it's about Mario and Princess Peach teaming up to rescue Luigi. By making the plot focusing on rescuing Luigi instead of Peach, the story has much stronger emotional stakes to it. Mario has a stronger and much more established relationship with Luigi as where he only just met Peach, allowing his determination and struggles he goes through to rescue him feel more authentic and deserved. It also allows for a very refreshing dynamic between Mario and Peach, where they get to have a fun and charming relationship and get to know each other better over the course of the story. It's a really refreshing approach to the formula after so many years of just having her being a plot device for Mario to rescue. The way the movie is paced is also pretty good, even if its third act is a bit rushed. The movie takes its time to build up plot points and establish characters, allowing the audience to gravitate to them properly. You get a good feel of who everyone is, what motivates them, and why they act the way they act. As for the characters themselves, they're a lot of fun to watch. Mario is a pretty tame everyman who has an arc about wanting to prove himself to others while wanting to protect his brother Luigi. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where Mario is doing all these free-running stunts across a construction site while the two are trying to get to a client for their plumbing business. And along the way, Mario takes the time to help Luigi across the obstacles because he knows he's more timid and not as athletic. It's a great visual storytelling technique that establishes Mario's protective nature of Luigi, and his desire to look out for him without resorting to any dragged-out dialogue. He's also really smart and knows how to carry over experiences into different situations. In the battle against Donkey Kong, he incorporates strategies he learned while going through Peach's obstacle course, so he demonstrates a lot of flexibility and planning during tense situations. It's also great to see his victory over Donkey Kong feeling earned after his experiences in the obstacle course instead of just letting him win as a result of plot protection. He doesn't automatically get through during the first try and fails a whole bunch of times before finally almost getting to the goal. And Peach tells him that the important thing is that he learned from his past failures and made progress, and that progress and drive to keep pushing himself no matter how many times he gets knocked down pays off when he bests DK in the arena. He's also really noble, which is in tune with his personality in the games. In spite of DK constantly putting him down and acting like a jerk, he still takes time to show mercy to him, protecting him and watching his back during battles against the bad guys. And he doesn't brag about it either. It's just that desire to help others out of the goodness of his heart. The way Mario is portrayed in this movie is highly satisfying, allowing his character to go through legitimate struggles and challenges for his triumph in the climax to feel properly earned. And the other characters are fun too. I've been hearing a lot of people complaining about Peach being some sort of female empowerment stereotype like Rey Palpatine or whatever the hell her name was from Rings of Power. And Peach isn't any of those things in the movie. She was always meant to be a more independent female character as far back as the original comics released in the US. Even Miyamoto himself has stated that Peach was intended to be a stronger and less reliant character, and the movie does a great job at demonstrating that ideal of her character being more outgoing. It allows her to be a faithful companion to Mario, helping him through the dangers of a world he isn't familiar with while giving him enough space to grow on his own. There's a proper balance in the way they both progress during the events of the movie. She acts as a mentor to him, helping him learn more about the wider world and how to have more confidence in himself. And there's a lot of respect to how that dynamic of their relationship is handled. And there's also no forced romance between them, allowing them to get to know each other naturally to build up their relationship to be wholesome and poignant. Luigi has a more downplayed role in the film, but still gets to have an important one as the little brother who looks up to Mario as his hero, feeling inspired and learning to be brave by following his example. He has a timid and more reclusive personality, taking after his portrayal in Luigi's Mansion, and it makes for a good representation of the character by showing how familiar the filmmakers are with the source material. He also gets a bit of a standout moment during the final battle, and it feels like a good payoff. Seeing him learn to be brave because of Mario always inspiring him and looking out for him is a pretty nice bit of character development for him. Then you have Bowser, who's a lot of fun to watch. When you hear about the King of the Koopas being in a feature-length Mario movie, this is the kind of Bowser you would expect to have. Menacing while also being really funny. He's a hopeless romantic obsessed with winning Peach's affection, but they do it in a way that allows him to still be sinister and villainous. It makes for some really good jokes and funny banter between him and his minions, and he also displays a lot of intimidation when he gets serious. He's brooding and powerful, and the movie does a good job in balancing his more comedic side with his vicious, short-tempered attitude. Even Donkey Kong is pretty entertaining with the screen time he's given. He's got a bit of an ego-boasting personality, and his quibs with Mario are mildly amusing enough. The only weak point he has in the movie is this really rushed resolution to their rivalry. There's a scene where they start talking about how they both feel embarrassed by their dads, and then they start getting angry at each other, and then they suddenly just stop fighting and become a cooperative team. It happens so quickly and the audience isn't really given any time to process it. They just go through the motions in half a minute and then they're off to the big climax. Seeing this part of the movie fumbling the ball with Mario and DK's dynamic makes me think back to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and how it did a much better job in building a connection between Sonic and Knuckles. If they didn't rush through it so fast, the scene could have had a lot more weight to it than just having them argue for a bit before putting aside their differences. It's one of those parts in the movie that could have definitely been improved on if it was given more time. But in spite of that, the cast manages to be very charming and they never do anything cringe-inducing. It makes the movie a lot of fun to watch in spite of the movie's story being weak. The narrative itself is pretty by the numbers and generic, which is really underwhelming when you think about it. It's just your run-of-the-mill road trip movie where the hero has to travel across a fantasy land in search of a great power to defeat the villain. But even though the story is generic, I will give it credit for avoiding some of the more horrible cliches and tropes you would see in an Illumination movie. There's no pretentious liar-revealed plot or an annoying third-act breakup between the characters. They know what the audience wants to see and they give it to us without any horrible filler to pad out the runtime. It helps the pacing of the story feel tighter and properly laid out. The visuals are also excellent. Not just that the animation looks good, but because of the camera work and dynamic angles that go into the cinematography. Every shot is huge and presents a massive scope of the world, making you feel like you've really been transported into the Mushroom Kingdom. It helps in establishing the setting and tone of the movie with beautiful atmosphere and sound design. The music is also really good. There's a lot of fantastic recreations of familiar tunes with fluid energy and mesmerizing direction with each instrument. It does a really good job in getting you pumped up for what's happening on screen while capturing the tone of this optimistic world of adventure. But the element that really helps this movie shine as a Mario movie is its unquestionable love and faithfulness to the source material. Unlike that horrible live-action movie from the 80s, Illumination Studios knew exactly who their audience was and how to entertain them. There's all sorts of smart and thoughtful uses of material from the games and incorporating them into the story in a believable way. Much like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it uses elements from the games while telling a new original narrative that isn't just a cheap imitation of the plot from the games. Without going into too much detail, there's this one scene where they reference the infamous blue shell from the Mario Kart games, and the way it's integrated into the story and the world the movie sets up is a stroke of brilliance. There's a lot of moments like this throughout the movie, where they use things that fans of Mario are familiar with, but not in a way that's fan service for the sake of fan service. They help move the story forward in a natural way without it being desperate. The references and Easter eggs are intrinsic with the world, and are used in a way that isn't careless or predictable. With all the little nods and hints they make to various Mario games, you can tell that this was a passion project that Illumination Studios really wanted to succeed in doing. And collaborating with Nintendo and Miyamoto to bring the film to life really shows how much they wanted to stay true and faithful to the source material. It's as much of a love letter to Mario fans as the Sonic movies are to Sonic fans, because a lot of respect and care was put into adapting this IP for the story they wanted to tell. It keeps a consistent tone, never being too dark or too cheery, and it has a fun presentation with how much time they put into recreating all of these familiar settings from the games. Even the comedy is surprisingly tolerable for an Illumination movie. The jokes they go for are enjoyably silly without being too hyperactive and loud without taking away from the drama of more serious scenes. And even if they're not that funny, they never do anything cringy or unbearable or overly childish. I really have to respect Illumination for showing restraint when it comes to their more juvenile style of humor, and not allowing any of it to creep into this film. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is a perfect example of not judging a book by its cover, because for all the time people have spent making fun of Illumination Studios and expecting this movie to be bad, this was some of the most fun I've had with a video game adaptation since last year's amazing video game adaptation. It's a movie that knows what it wants to be and who it's trying to appeal to, and it remains faithful to both fans of the games and the wider world of the Mario universe itself. If I had to go with one major complaint I had with the movie, it would have to be the star casting they used for the voice acting. Anya Taylor-Joy is pretty good as Peach and Jack Black is okay as Bowser, but every other voice actor is just grating. Their voices are so generic and don't fit any of these characters at all, and it's painfully obvious they just wanted to cash in on popular Hollywood celebrities instead of finding people that were best suited for these roles. In order for me to really delve into this problem, I would have to make an entire separate video delving into the problem with star casting for animated movies and why it almost never works. But that's a topic for another day. With that said, I can safely say the Super Mario Bros. Movie is a really fun movie, and it just might be Illumination's best movie to date. Perhaps not as solid as Despicable Me, but it's definitely their most passionate film with the love and respect they had for these characters and fans of the source material. It's easy to tell that the studio was really ambitious about this one by avoiding so many of the traps that are laced throughout their other movies, and just wanted to tell a fun story with charming characters. I would actually go so far as to say that it's the second best movie of 2023 so far, after John Wick Chapter 4. I know there may be people who are hesitant to watch this one given Illumination's infamous track record, but for now, I would say go out and give this movie a shot. You might be pleasantly surprised, and if not, well, it's better than Ant-Man 3, so take that for what it's worth. Thanks for checking out my review. If you liked what you saw here and would like to support me, check out my Patreon in the description. Every little bit helps and I always appreciate those who support my work. Until next time, stay cool.